There is so much going on with reality TV this week. I mean, insane. The biggest story from reality TV this week was Anna Delvey being voted off Dancing with the Stars because she proved that really the only thing she's good at is conning people. It was a double elimination on Dancing with the Stars, and Tori Spelling was also voted off. What I loved about that whole situation was that the second place winner on America's Got Talent on that same night was a dog named Rhythm, and he was a dancing dog, and he danced better than Anna Delvey. I also just loved seeing the Richard Goodall, who was the winner of America's Got Talent. He's a janitor. He's just a normal person, and I loved seeing him win the $1 million. Like, we need more of that. That was feel good. And to have it be sort of juxtaposed with Anna Delvey being voted off, that just felt right. We also had the first celebrity eliminated on The Masked Singer. Now, they were a leaf sheep, which is actually like a real aquatic animal, which is insane to think about. It's weird, but it's real. And the leaf sheep sang Tim McGraw's I Like It, I Love It. And they were fine, but they weren't fine enough to be not in the bottom. And they were revealed to be Denver Broncos quarterback John Elway. But he took it in stride. I mean, he had fun. It seemed like he had a good time. And that's sort of what The Masked Singer's all about. These celebrities, heavy air quotes there, just putting on a mask and singing their songs and having a good time. I still am amazed that people care about The Masked Singer, though. It seems like the strangest reality show for people to be obsessed with. But hey, they are. And there are they've got a big cast going on. So we got a few weeks of people, some big reveals coming up. Over on the Golden Bachelorette, Joan is just surrounded by the men. And it was a fun episode. They had like a senior prom and a talent show. And then Joan took one of her dates on a one-on-one on a date to Disneyland. I mean, I'm a Disney freak. So like that's cool. I also just love Disney adults, you know? Like, I love just adults going to Disney. They also had a cute moment where they talked about their hearing aids. And I feel like that also happened on the first season of The Golden Bachelor. So, like, I don't know if this is going to be a thing that happens every season of the senior versions of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, but I'm okay with it because it never really gets old. I mean, I'm not even old and I have trouble hearing. Maybe that's just going to be my future. I talk about not being able to hear every single day. Maybe that's just what seniors do. Apparently on The Golden Bachelorette, it's what happens. And over on Survivor, it was, I mean, people were sort of getting used to that big send-off from the first episode when you had John Lovett, the podcast host, who was voted off that nobody saw coming. And this episode, the second episode of season 47, it was, strategy got into play. Groups, you start seeing these groups sort of coming together because they have each individual tribe. And in the one tribe, I mean, the tribe on the bottom, you definitely saw a separation in gender. And while the women saw sort of a bromance happening of the men on the tribe, the men were sort of ambivalent to the whole gender separation. They didn't even notice it, which, let's be real, is a typical male response. And in the end, TK, one of the dudes that the women kept talking about, who was sort of like, not the leader of the dudes, but was sort of the instigator of the bromance, he was the one voted off. And so I chatted with TK about what that's all about, what he thinks he did wrong, where he thinks maybe that sort of separation in gender started, and some of the things that maybe we didn't see shown on the episode. So here's my chat with TK.
Yeah, I bet you've had better days. I mean, this is not, it's never fun to be the one that has to go on all these interviews the next day after you've been cast off. How are you feeling?
I'm actually doing pretty good. I think the more of these I do, I feel a little bit better. But also, I think seeing everything that happened, when you actually watch it and seeing the stuff that was going on around you, you start realizing how much things weren't in your control.
Yeah.
And that makes you a little bit more at peace with what happened, because it's like, okay, it's not like my plan was terrible. It's like, oh, I just didn't know that this was going on, and this is the reason this happened, and this didn't really have anything to do with this. So you start putting the pieces together, and it just makes you a little bit more comfortable.
The word control, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a big part. That was a part of last night or the episode. And I wanted to know, like, the lack of control, was that, I mean, because it felt like even in the moment that was sort of a thing for you. Like, was that a thing for you?
I wouldn't say that. I think it's just more along the lines of not really knowing. And I think you think it's going to be easier to not know who's being genuine with you.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit more difficult when you're out there because you know everybody's not being genuine with you, but you need to figure out who's being the most genuine with you. And
Yeah.
it's just a weird situation. And once you realize like you can't really control anything, you just start going with the flow. But then at that point, you just play free, just play your game. Like things are
Yeah.
gonna happen that you don't know about. All you can do is play with the knowledge that you have. And I just tried my best to get as much knowledge as I could. So I tried to put things in place to set me up for success, even like having Tiana locked in with the girls, but also locked in with us. So I'm having Tiana feeding us information there and like
Hmm.
me making sure I went on that. You know, I was glad that I went on that to get the tribe supplies because I was
Yeah.
able to build a relationship with Asia, who was going to be able to give me information hopefully down the line if I had made the merge. And
Hmm.
you know, just trying my best to put things in place where I feel like I can get more control. But I
Yeah.
never feel like, and I don't think anybody does, that you ever have full control in Survivor. It's not possible to do that. So
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I can't even think of anyone ever who's ever had control. Do
no.
you do you feel like, I mean, watching it back, you know, does it, you have the relationships that you have, the in-person relationships when you're on the
Mhm.
island and you're talking to each other, but then
Mhm.
watching it back, I'm sure you can have a different perspective even after you go to Ponderosa and stuff. Like, I'm sure
Yeah.
now after actually seeing it on television, you may have a different perspective on the people that you were there with. So like,
Yeah.
what's changed for you since last night?
Um, yeah, I'd say, and I'll speak to just the perspective of the gameplay, right? The perspective of the people within the game. And I would just say that I had no idea Tiana felt so against me a lot of these times. Like I didn't know that was the case. I mean, even her mentioning like, oh, I don't know if I like TK. I don't know if I like his ego or whatever she said. It was weird because Tiana and I maybe had a max 3 conversations the entire time we were on that island. A
Mm,
lot of people thought because we were in an alliance together that we had talked all the time, but that wasn't the case. The only times we did talk is when all 3 of us would get together and we would talk our strategy, and that was it.
yeah.
Most of the time, Kyle was the intermediary between the 2 of us. She would go to Kyle. Kyle would come to me and tell me what she was saying, and Kyle and I were 1 and 2.
Hmm.
So a lot of it was me getting information from him about Tiana. It was weird. And I remember talking to Tiana a couple times on my own, and I'm like, we need to talk more one-on-one. Like, I feel like we're not getting enough one-on-one time. And she's like, oh, I feel the same way. But then she wouldn't really put any effort to talk to me one-on-one.
Mm,
And when we finally did, we had a really good conversation, a really good breakthrough moment. We talked about just life, like, you know, our relationships with our dads,
hmm.
potentially having kids down the line, just things people talk about when there's nothing to do out there, right?
Yeah.
We had a really good conversation. I mean, she ends up crying and tearing up about some stuff we're talking about. It was like a really emotional conversation. And I felt like that was a breakthrough point for us. And I felt like, wow, she can finally see past the exterior of, oh, this is a big, strong, athletic guy who's an athlete who wants to win and he's competitive. She can see past all that and understand like who I am now.
Yeah.
And I thought we were good. So it was so weird to me. I'm just as shocked as everybody else is the
Hmm.
reaction of when we're on the mat and she kind of reacts to what I'm saying that way because it's like, okay, I never called anybody out in particular.
Yeah.
So why are you upset? But also I said that I don't like to associate myself with people who are okay with losing. And you're in my alliance, so I'm associating with you. So
Yeah.
why would you think I'm talking about you? So it was just the weirdest thing in the world. But all I can attribute it to maybe is just the fact that we're not eating, we're not sleeping, we're barely
Mm,
drinking water. People are a lot more irritable. It's things like that that you don't really understand unless you're out there. A lot of those things hit you. So maybe her mental at the time wasn't all the way there. Maybe mine wasn't all the way there either.
yeah.
To be able to take that way and make it a personal thing, I was kind of taken aback by that as well.
There's also the sue of it all, which
Yeah.
I feel like the sue of it all. I mean, I feel like that's going to be a line that I use a lot this season. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel like
Yeah.
I'm going to say that a lot. Do you? I mean, she's such a character, and she's also such an obvious person to be voted off first in a situation
Yeah.
like this. And just because of the reality of what we know about Survivor, but also like you save the strongest for especially early on in the game, like you
Mhm.
make sure you have the strongest, all those things. And she's strong, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
you know, the perception wise would be to get rid of her. So like what do you make of the sue of it all?
So there's a couple things I have from the Sue situation. Sue never had any intention on working with me whatsoever. I tried to talk to her a bunch of times. She was not open to talking to me. I don't know what that was about, but she just wasn't open to talking to me. So I just kind of left that as what it was. But what I will say is Sue had a better chance of staying because our entire tribe was strong. I think in the history of Survivor, we're used to seeing you typically have your big guy, and then you have a couple of smaller people, and then you might have a stronger woman. And you have our entire tribe was strong. Sue was our weakest person, and she's not weak.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She's strong. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like you got Caroline, who people are looking at like, oh, she's not going to be super strong. She's one of the strongest swimmers we had. She's a great puzzle person. She's a competitor in those ways. So she had a lot of value as well. So for me, I'm looking at it as soon as I touched feet on that sand in the island, I looked around and I looked at my tribe and I said, I'm actually in trouble. Because if I had been on Gada or Lavo, then I would have been there probably until the merge because they need that strength, right?
Yeah.
Like they would have needed me. I would have been an invaluable member to that group. But when you look at our group and our 5 and you see how strong we were as a 6, then you start thinking, well, do we necessarily need the strongest guy if we're all strong? Do we think we cannot compete with everybody else without TK? So I realized that was the case early on. So that's why I really wanted to make it a point to add value to the team. So that's why I really wanted to go get the tribe supplies for the team. I really wanted to be the one to do that because I felt like I can show my team like, hey, I'm willing to go all out for you guys. And keep in mind, I'm thinking I'm going to end up having to do a sweat challenge.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to go put it all on the line to do this thing for my tribe. And I'm thinking that's going to build me some equity with these people. Didn't build a lot. I mean, they were happy with it the first day, and then it was like they forgot it even happened. And then I'm going all out. Every single challenge you've seen us do, it's me hopping out to go grab the heaviest thing. It's me running over here to do this. It's me pulling the chest out of the water and it's me doing all these things. And I'm doing it because I just want to show my tribe, like I'm willing to do whatever I can for us as a group. And I think that's where I made the mistake of trying to make it a team thing where it should have just been a me thing. And I should have been maybe not playing the game so hard to win and maybe just more setting myself up for success if we did lose.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what the problem was. I think I was looking at it from the perspective of we need to go as hard as we can go in these challenges because then we don't have to worry about trying.
Yeah.
But everybody else seemed to have a different mindset on that. So
there was a conversation that, and I'm fascinated by the social dynamics of Survivor, and especially early on with tribes, that there was sort of the bromance situation or the separation in genders within the tribe. And I wanted to know what you make of all of that.
Yeah, I think the only thing I can say is I just think that people see me and make assumptions. I'm used to this happening in my day-to-day life. They'll see me and they make us. I'm a big guy. I look like an athlete. I have all these tattoos. You're probably not going to think this is the most educated person in the world when you see me. Yeah. So I think a lot of people just assume that I'm going to just be like not emotionally intelligent and understand what's going on around me. So keep in mind, Alec, the moment I touched my feet back on that island from getting the supplies, they created the narrative that there was a guy's thing, right? But keep in mind, when we were in that water and I'm talking to Kyle and I'm talking to Gabe, the girls were right in front of me. The camera's just in front of them. The girls are right in front of me. We're all talking. I'm dapping all of them up. I'm trying to get to know all of them. I'm talking to them at the end and I'm like, hey guys, like when we're sitting at camp that first night, I'm like, can everybody tell me their stories? I want to get to know everybody. You know what I mean? And everybody told me their stories and it got around to Sue and I was like, okay, Sue, tell me yours. And she's like, I already told my story. And I'm like, well, yeah, so I wasn't here. And she's like, yeah, I don't feel like telling it again right now. And I'm like, okay, so I can already feel like, okay, there's something off there. But with everybody else, I absolutely tried to make connections. Caroline, I tried to bring in. I even at one point, they don't show it, but Gabe was not my fourth anymore in my mind. My mind, my perfect ideal group to take to the merge was going to be me, Kyle, Tiana, and Caroline, not Gabe. So a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of strategy talk that you miss. But the initial plan was to get Gabe out of here the second vote. The next vote that we had, the plan for us was to get Gabe out.
Yeah.
Not Caroline. So I absolutely wanted to work with the women. I think that they just created a narrative that just wasn't true, but it fit for what Sue and Caroline needed to do, right? Because now you're bringing in Tiana, right? And it's like, now you have Tiana. Now you guys have a solidified 3 when you were, worried about it. But instead of just coming and trying to bridge a conversation with me, they just assumed. So once I actually talked to Tiana, she was so shocked. Like, oh my God, you really want to work with me? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I want to work with all you guys. Like, why wouldn't I want to work with you?
Yeah.
So it was a weird narrative, but I think ultimately it ended up working out okay for me because, once I got Tiana on board, I was like, Tiana, keep the girls thing. Keep feeding me information, what they're saying.
Yeah.
Don't act like anything has changed. And I will keep acting like we have a guys thing. I'll keep Gabe around. I can keep an eye on Gabe, right? But ultimately, the whole goal out of that last challenge was for me to get Gabe so uncomfortable. And I did. There's a lot they don't show, but I'm telling Gabe, even you see it on one point, we're on the beach. I'm like, Gabe, a lot of people are saying they haven't talked to you. A lot of people are saying they don't really know who you are. A lot of people are saying they don't trust you. You're idol hunting. So I wanted to just keep planting in his mind, like, I might not be safe this first vote. So he could play that idol, and then I could maneuver it the way I needed to. And it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah, I mean, he did play, he played the idol, but like,
it
was a stupid play.
It was a stupid play. But a lot, see, I don't get that.
At least you have that. At least you have that someone made a stupid play because you were getting in their head. Which
I wish they showed that.
Yeah. Well, my last question for you is, what do you think you could have done differently to have made the situation work out better for you?
I think that if I were to do it all over again, I would have never went on that challenge to get the tribe supplies. I think I would have sat back, I would have hung out, and I would have started talking to people immediately. And I think I would have tried to just build those relationships. But at the same time, it's a little bit weird because my mindset going into it was, I want to make it as far as I possibly can. I don't want to just make it kind of far or make it to the merge and get kicked off like every strong person does. I want to make it as far as I possibly can. So my mindset was I needed to get the strongest people in my tribe to be aligned with me so we can go into this merge strong. So all of us can point at each other like, that's the person you need to get, not me. Like, so if we're all that strong, we'd be able to do it. So I think I would have put more time into the social game of strategic talk with everybody as opposed to keeping it under wraps with just Tiana and just Kyle. I would have not went on that challenge. I would have sat there. I would have started talking to Caroline early and getting that wall broken down between what she thought I was and who I actually am. I would have did the same thing with Tiana, the same thing with Kyle, the same thing with those people. And I think I would have been in a better situation because, Caroline and I had a really great conversation at one point on that island. And we both looked at each other and was like, I would love to work with you. You know what I mean? But I think it's just a day too late. So
it's always a day too late, isn't it?
Timing.
Yeah, it's all about timing. Well, thanks so much for chatting with me. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. This was awesome.